So, I'm pretty sure we're all aware that this was going to end up happening, but Capcom, after the release of the Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster, has sent out surveys to fans asking what they would like Capcom to do next, which brings a lot of concerns if you ask me. You guys know my thoughts on the newest Dead Rising remake, but today I want to talk about how they can improve from the original games that they are setting out to remake, and how they can do a better job than what they did. If you enjoy this video, please subscribe to the channel to support my videos. I would greatly appreciate it. Also, don't forget to comment what you would like to see fixed in case I missed anything. But yeah, with that out of the way, let's get into the video. So for this remake to be successful, they need to do a full remake, not a half remake, half remaster shit that they did with Dead Rising. And the way I could see this going is that the story, for starters, I believe they should make both Frank and Chuck as options to play as in the campaign. But instead of it being a solid shot for shot of both Dead Rising 2 and Off the Record, they should make it that if you play as Frank, you get the off-the-record story, but somehow make it canon to the main story, just with Chuck and Katie in the safe room, while Frank investigates. Or if you play as Chuck, vice versa, with Frank in a small capacity to not overshadow the character that is on your screen. They would obviously need to bring back the combo weapons with the slight bike modifications and the psychopath bosses. And we all know they're going to find a way to change something with the bosses, but let's hope they try to bring back the same voice actors for some of them. I wouldn't mind them changing the characters around just as long as they at least try to bring back what people know and love. The next thing I would like for them to add is a completed section of the Hotel Plaza, because it would be nice to have more places to explore. They also need to bring back the safety deposit boxes for people to unlock clothing in. And the boxes could also be a great way to unlock money and do achievement hunting stuff and be able to unlock all of the clothes at the same time. Besides that, I believe they should start changing the ending of the game to something more canon, because most people would rather something canon so it doesn't feel unnatural, especially when the DLC that follows it doesn't line up with the ending that most people got when they were playing the game. I can say from experience that I've played Dead Rising 2 a ton of times, and I thought that the happy ending was canon to the game until I find out in Case West that it wasn't. Having Frank in the game would also explain him coming to Fortune City, because I mean, unless you read the comics, you won't understand why he shows up. The game also needs some quality of life upgrades to the graphics, replayability, and to the health and movement system. They don't have tank controls in this game, but the controls could surely use an upgrade from something that doesn't stray too far away from the original game. But that's all of the things I could think of in terms for Dead Rising 2. Everything else could really straighten themselves out with the game getting remade. The NPC controls they did in the remaster were pretty spot on, and basically everything they did in the 2018 remaster was pretty good too. It was basically the same thing but with better graphics, and if they bring back the original voice actor of Chuck, or someone that's very similar to him, I think that will make a lot of fans happy, and it would just mean a very solid game. But let's get on into Dead Rising 3. So this game, for starters, needs to be available on all platforms, which is something I don't believe would be a problem, but here are a couple of things that I believe need to be fixed before they remake it. The first thing is obviously the story. Don't change the entire thing, but change small details, like Nick being the cure for the zombie outbreak, for example. That shouldn't be in the game because that puts up roadblocks for future games. Instead of that, make his blood a temporary vaccine, similar to Zombrex but stronger. They also need to try to keep in Phenotrans as the big bad, because constantly trying to switch around between the government, the military, and a secret pharmaceutical lab is kind of difficult. I mean, Resident Evil has pulled it off fairly well because the outbreaks have been to mass scales, which make it worth it, but for the most part, from what we've seen, they have tried switching it around, but with very lackluster zombie outbreaks to show for it, so nobody even cares. That's something I believe that they should change with the story. The next thing are the psychopath bosses. See, the psychopath bosses are really good because not only is it like a mini boss that you can fight, but you get to learn more about the bosses that you're going up against. Like, you learn their backstories, what made them end up this way. And with Dead Rising 3, we got psychopath bosses, but not to the same degree that we saw in the older games. And that is something I believe it needs to be fixed. They need to add more psychopaths, or at least write in more backstory that makes sense, because unless you're looking under the notebook section of your game, you don't really find out much about them. The next thing for me would be they need to change the survivor system and make it an escort system with designated survivor districts per zone, which I know this is very similar to the system they already have in place, but I guarantee you most people after playing the game through once, they don't stop to save survivors, and if it was an escort system, they would have a reason to explore the environments and get all of the PP that you can get to level yourself up. I also believe that they should try to keep the Annie reveal in there, and I know it won't make an impact on whether they take it out or not, but they should definitely leave it in because I think it's a nice callback to the older games that many people who were longtime fans of the franchise really enjoyed, because Chuck gets to make an appearance again, which made Dead Rising 3 feel like it was still made by the company that we know and love. Now, something I believe that should stay in the game are definitely the vehicle mods, because there's a huge variety of vehicles that you can use that are actually kind of fun to use, and they fit in the game really well, because not only are they mass murdering killing machines, but you need to travel from place to place, and if you tried walking everywhere in that game, you'd drive yourself crazy with how much time you waste. So I think the vehicles should definitely stay in the game, at least at a small, if not medium-sized capacity. Not let it overtake the entire game's marketing ploy like Dead Rising 4's mech suits did. And this leads into my next point, because I believe that the vehicle and clothing lockers should definitely stay in the game. Those are probably the best things about the Dead Rising 3 game. They should definitely remove the weapon lockers though. Even though the clothing lockers has been done perfectly in Dead Rising the Deluxe Remaster, I feel like adding a gun locker again makes the game way too easy to cheese by stacking up whatever weapons you can and going out to fight the boss. I feel like the psychopath bosses should be somewhat difficult, and having the weapon locker at your disposal just removes all the fun of that challenging aspect, so that's definitely something that needs to go if they remake the game. The next thing I would like out of the Dead Rising 2 remake is that they stop catering to just one audience. And what I mean by this is the Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster felt so easy that it felt like I was playing on the easiest difficulty alive. And I feel like they should really try to cater to both the longtime fans and the new fans by adding two separate difficulties that you can play on, which I understand they have Classic and they have the Standard mode on the Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster, but I feel like that is, even though it's just for controls, it doesn't really change the difficulty that much, because the controls, yeah, were a part of the difficulty in the first game, but it didn't make up the entire game once you finally got your steamboat moving. And I would just really like to see two different difficulties, one for new people and one for longtime fans, which I hope they do that, because that was one of my big problems with the Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster, is that it felt way too easy to play, and I just want something that will feel like a Dead Rising game again, if that's too much to ask. The next thing I would really like to see them bring back is the time limit, and I know Dead Rising 3 had a time limit, trust me, I know, but I feel like the system that they had for the Deluxe Remaster just works so well that they could put that in any other Dead Rising game and it could be a new staple to the franchise. And it's something I wish was in the franchise from the very beginning. But if they bring this into Dead Rising 3, I feel like that they could still have that generous time limit, but just also allow you to skip forward when you want. And that's really all I could think about when it comes to Dead Rising 3. Again, I really want the original voice actor for Nick to return so that it doesn't feel like they're just throwing away all of the old or classic voice actors for the game, but I'm sure the voice actor is going to get replaced because, I mean, it's Capcom. and they didn't even reach out to TJ Rotolo for Frank when they could have, but we'll see how that will turn out in the future. Next, we're going to talk about Dead Rising 4 and what Dead Rising 4 can be changed. So, I know we've talked about Dead Rising 4's issues before, but I'll go over it again because there are some more things that I found while making this video that need to be addressed or need to be fixed, but we all know that this game isn't completely lost. There is definitely a light at the end of the tunnel for this game, but for starters, we're going to talk about the story. The story for this game could have been absolutely incredible, even fine at best, if they had done everything correctly, but for starters, I think they need to remove Vic and leave it with Frank returning to Willamette to get back on top again after his failure of exposing the Pentagon and Phenotrans after Case West. And this is where I think that Phenotrans should make its appearance after Dead Rising 3 with a new leader, or under new leadership. They definitely need to remove the detective with the camera, because that kills the pacing of the game and makes the game extremely boring. Nobody wants to do that detective shit unless you're playing as Batman in a Arkham game. The other issue is the ending too. Frank Rising needs to be cut or replaced with something that sets up the future for the franchise in case they decide to move on to Dead Rising 5. And if they do bring it back, if it doesn't get cut, make it more about Frank finding evidence against the government and forget Frank turning into a zombie. And they need to make it not be a paid DLC. They need to make it an overtime mode like it should have been in the first place. The next thing on the chopping block should be the Christmas theme. Cut that out. We don't need that. It's terrible. That's part of the reason why the game tanked in the first place, is because nobody wants to play a Christmas themed game when you're in the summer. It's just when you see a game that has snow falling, it reminds you more of Christmas. It's more of a subconscious effort to not play that game when you're playing during the summer because it doesn't feel right. It doesn't fit the vibe. And that's part of the issue with Dead Rising 4, and that's what they need to take it out. They also need to bring back the time limit with the system they implemented in the Deluxe Remaster, because I didn't mind the system. It helped out a ton and it allowed for exploration and fast forwarding to the next objective. One of the things I noticed from the Dead Rising Remaster is that I forgot to add in my other video that the time limit was actually way more strict in the Deluxe Remaster than in the original. So at least I think so, that's my opinion, but I like it. I like the time limit in the Deluxe Remaster. I think it actually made the game pretty good. But yes, I know, this is about Dead Rising 4, so let me just get on to my next point. The next thing I think they need to change or remove are the Christmas-themed combo weapons. And they need to make better combo weapons, more variety to these combo weapons, because the combo weapons, there's like 3 or 4 of them that I can remember off the top of my head that were actually effective and useful in the game, because other than that they were just complete crap. This is also something that I believe should fall in line with the combo vehicles as well, and I would also say the mech suits should be removed as well, or at least drastically changed so that it is more accessible. And if you can add more attachments to the mech suits to add more variety to the system, maybe it would be a little better, but just to be safe, I would remove the mech suits altogether, because me personally, I wasn't a huge fan of the mech suits. I thought they were pretty garbage and kind of made the game seem way better than it actually was. But as long as they follow those strict points, because those are like the big things that a lot of people want to see changed or fixed. The next point, which is almost as big as the combo weapon and mech suit point, is the psychopath bosses. These need to stay in the game, or at least need to be added into the game, because Dead Rising 4 originally did not have psychopath boss fights. They had maniac boss fights, which were terrible. Absolutely terrible. Like, the psychopath boss fights are the well-written stories and real people that are affected by the zombie outbreak. It's not just some macho character you play as. You get to see real people being affected by this virus, and it makes it more compelling. and fun to play, because I mean, everybody who has played the Dead Rising franchise can tell you that the psychopath bosses are probably the reason why they bought the game. Me personally, I saw videos online on YouTube when I was a kid of all of the boss fights for the psychopaths, and I was so blown away by that I went out and I bought the game. That was the selling point for me. It was the psychopath bosses. And when they removed those, it just completely ruined the game for me. And I just really hope that they decide to bring that back in the Dead Rising 4 remake if we get that far. This is something I believe that they need to fix. At least listen to the fans on this, because they can't do a one-for-one remake, and they need to drastically overhaul everything. Maybe even take time to make it. They need to bring back Josh Patrick to do the voice for Frank, even if it takes the game years to release and continue. Because I think he did a fantastic job in the deluxe remaster, and he deserves to continue as Frank West. But these are all the things that I could think of without retreading my older videos, and I think a lot of this will make the franchise great again instead of ruining the potential of the entire franchise. And again, hopefully Capcom listens to the fans, because this game could be a money printing machine like Resident Evil if they are just willing to go the distance to make it happen. But we'll see how all of this turns out, because again, the franchise really does deserve to get better treatment, and it really does deserve to continue on. Even after they get the sales numbers for the deluxe remaster, I really hope that Capcom is willing to take a serious interest in reviving these games for other remakes. And with them sending out surveys, it might also be a good sign that they're doing this, but I just don't want to get my hopes up in case it turns out to be the same trick that EA has pulled on us with the Dead Space franchise remakes. Again, only time will tell what Capcom decides to do. The ball is realistically in Capcom's court if they're willing to pursue it, but that's going to be it for now. I just want to thank everybody who's watching. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to comment your thoughts down below in case I missed something in this video, or if you want to comment what you'd like to see fixed yourself. I just want to thank you all for watching, and have a good night.